welcome to you. So what is this forum about? It's something that we do every 18 months, or we try to do every 18 months as the Natural Science Collection Facility. And it's really our opportunity to all gather to build and strengthen our community, to learn about each other and from each other, to look back a little bit, but mostly to look forward as a community, to think about ourselves and caring for ourselves and our well-being. And some people might say, well, what's that got to do with collections? Why should we be worrying about well-being? But we've recognized that happy, healthy people means a strong network working together to achieve our common purpose. That's really important. And then to inspire and motivate. We know that times have been very challenging over the last 2.5 years, almost 3 years. And it can be very difficult working in collections and challenges, but being all together can be very inspirational and motivating. And then we also try to have some fun. So there's some serious things, but there's also fun things. If you laugh together, it also binds you together as a group. So it's not a normal conference or symposium filled with days of presentations on projects. We have a very different way of gathering and engaging with each other. And people who've been to previous forums will understand and know that. So just to look back a little bit, our first forum, it's 5 years ago. I couldn't believe it when I actually worked it out. So in October 2017, we got together for the first time in Drakensberg, and it was the launch of the Natural Science Collection Facility and our first forum. And you can see from the pictures, we had Dr. Adams from the BSI, who was our dignitary and gave a presentation. We had lots of presentations, but we also, it was the first time that we'd all got together as a community, first time ever. And this is from my presentation that I gave at the launch. And I said that to achieve the objectives of the NSCF, we need to build a community. We need to share equipment and collections and share expertise about data management, about curation and collections management, about our displays and about our research. We need to solve problems together. We need to show the importance of collections overall across the whole country. And we need to work together to facilitate access to the collections globally. Even 5 years ago, building a community was a big thing. And we recognized that the institutions, all the collection institutions had worked largely in isolation for many, many years, maybe as many as 100 years in some cases. And we also recognize that institutions fall under very different governance structures. And these are the names of the government departments that were there at that time: arts and culture, provincial departments, environment, agriculture. And we recognized that there'd be no structure or institution that had worked to coordinate all the collection institutions. So the NSCF was the first sort of project, initiative, structure to bring everybody together. And then our second forum was in May 2019, and it was at Houdini Spa in the Western Cape. And when I put these slides together, I thought, wow, look how different this picture is from the first forum. The color, the busyness, everybody like a beehive all working together. And that's what had happened. Things had changed from being a kind of more traditional way of gathering to a very different way of getting people talking and debating and thinking about things and actively moving around, putting up stickers and boards and cards everywhere. And that was thanks to the involvement of Des and Ilze, and you can see them at the bottom there. So they brought a very different perspective and energy to our forum in 2019. So this is also just another picture from our forum, and I think it shows the bright colors and the kind of level of fun and recognizing individuals and their individual cultures and heritage, and really working hard to bring people together in a real way, and not just sitting statically in a row of tables listening to presentations. I think it shows the difference, how we've changed as a community just in that short time. And again, in 2019, at that forum, I reflected on building community again and looked at how far we had come since the 2017 forum. And there'd been a huge amount of activity going on since the launch of the NSCF. So the hub, we'd gone around to 16 institutions or units in 2018. We've met people, we've looked at the collections, we've set up a coordinating committee, working group that was very active for collection management and care. We had staff now employed in the NSCF hub, had a website, Facebook page, newsletters, and we'd initiated this change management, leadership development, transformation process with Des and Ilze. So we'd started to do a lot of work about building community, recognizing it won't just build itself. It doesn't happen just automatically. You actually have to do the work. And we'd also started to recognize that the work that was needed to build a strong network, it needed inclusivity. So it couldn't only be a small group of people or some people being excluded while others were included. It needed inclusivity. And we also recognized that if we were all going to be working together, adopting common standards and procedures, having the same policy and approach to access to the collections and data, it meant change, and change is very hard. And so at that point, we came to a realization that there was still a lot of work to do. So then our third forum was in March 2021. Actually, I realized it was 2021, not 2020. So change we were to learn hit us all very hard, the need to change when we were hit with COVID and lockdown and all being shut away from our collections and from our institutions. And so we continued our work, but we couldn't all get together physically. And so our third forum was actually, it was a virtual forum. It was in March 2021. And we had just published the Collections Management and Conservation Manual. And it was the formal launch of that manual. And we were starting to look at how do we get that manual implemented? It's fine to have this brilliant manual that everybody had worked so hard on, but now what happens? And so that was the main focus, but we also started to recognize the importance of caring. And so our theme was caring about our collections, caring about each other, and caring about ourselves in a very difficult time. It was a time of great uncertainty, of disruption, of sadness. There was loss. People had lost family, lost incomes, lost their way of life. But it was also a time of learning. And we were able to run a virtual forum that no one had ever done. We didn't get consultants. Chanel, Fulu, and the team figured it out. And it was a great success, a different way of gathering. Now we are on our fourth NSCF forum. And again, it's virtual. And it's October 2022. And for this forum, we really wanted to get together physically, all in one place. And we had a lot of discussion and debate about whether it should be physical or could be virtual. Also, CPOR got quotes for us, and we did some calculations. And we realized that it would cost us about 2 million rand to have a physical forum. The cost of flights has gone up. The cost of accommodation and conference venues is very high. And we wondered whether we could justify that amount of money for a 4-day gathering in this current economic environment. So we know everybody is short of money. Everybody needs things, staff, consumables, equipment, and we wondered about whether that would be justified. And then we also had to think about our carbon footprint. The vision of the NSCF is about the environment and conservation of biodiversity. And so we have to think about our impacts. And then we also had to think about, would it be feasible for people who are already so stretched, who have a shortage of staff? Now we're asking them not only to come to a 4-day forum, but to travel. And so they'd have to spend all day, every day away from their collections and time traveling, and they're so busy. So at the end of the day, we just decided that it had to be another virtual forum. We've done it before, it works well. And a forum planning team, together with Des and Ilze, have put together this forum focused on the proposed collections assessment that we'll be talking about quite a lot. But there's also lots of other interesting sessions. When I look at the program, I get very excited. I have to admit that I've had nothing to do with organizing the forum, and it's been the hard work of the planning team. So I'm really amazed at what the innovation and the excitement and the interest that they've given to this forum program. It won't be boring, I can assure you. It won't be the same as sitting in a conference or a symposium just listening to talks. So it is going to be a really exciting week and lots of activities to build and strengthen our community, but also offer lots of opportunities for learning and for fun as well. That's all from my side, just to say thank you to everybody for joining us. And we hope that you'll stay with us for the whole week and participate fully in what's going on, wherever you are. So remember, we scattered across the country, but get involved, participate, and let's hear everybody's voices. Let's hear your voices and enjoy it. And remember to drink lots of water from your water bottle that has been distributed to everybody. So have fun and enjoy, and thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Michelle. That was a beautiful welcome and just sketching the journey that the NSCF has been on with everyone in this room. So for those who are new, hopefully you are more orientated now and have a sense of what's come before. So thank you, Michelle. So we'd like to hand over now to Mr. Vuyani Hanisi, who will do the blessing for us.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm Vuyani Hanisi, a collection assistant from SIAM. This is a great honor for me to have this task. From biblical point of view, as a churchgoer or as a Christian, I read the Bible and I discovered that when God created the nature, He created everything in His image. It created mankind in His own image, and then gave them a dominion, gave them a ruler or a curator over the nature, which means God in His creation, He created us to look after the nature. I've discovered that in the Bible. So what we are doing is very important to God. And I'm happy to be part of this forum. I read in Genesis chapter 1 where we find God create all the universe. I'm not going to mention all of them, but I'll mention only 1 verse 26. And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over nature. If you can read, it says, let them have dominion. It's specified, it says, over fish in the sea, over fowl in the air, over cattle and over earth, over every creeping things that creepeth upon the earth. It is very important that what we are doing as a custodians of the collections is approved above. God approved what we are doing, and I'm happy for that. As we are about to embark on this forum for the next 4 days, let us ask God to give us wisdom. Let us ask God to give us, to protect our past, to secure the future for the next generation. Let us ask God to give us wisdom of coming together with a collective purpose. May God give us strength to proceed with the work that we're about to do. May we close our eyes as we're about to pray. Our eyes are closed, our heads are bowed. Heavenly Father, the creator of the universe, we ask you in a special way to be with us, to bless us, to be in this forum. We ask you in a special way to help to collect our minds, to be with us and help us to succeed. I pray in Jesus' name, amen. Thank you.
That was a beautiful blessing, and I think we all feel that energy that you've brought, and we trust that it will flow through to all the corners of South Africa, and that we've all received that energy. And we hope that each of you have woken up this morning with your own way of doing your prayer, blessing, and gratitude. I certainly did that. So we look forward to being with everyone this morning, and we look forward to the wisdom and the fun that Michelle reminded us that there's a lot of fun here as well, and a lot of excitement. So we'll be sharing a few slides in a few minutes just to orientate you further. So thank you for that blessing, and I'm going to hand over to my co-facilitator, Ilze, who will just take us into the next section. Thanks, Ilze. Over to you.
Thank you, Des. Good morning, everybody. Very poignant and beautiful to be with all of you here this morning. Thank you, Michelle, for taking us down that beautiful trip, that journey where we've come from. And thank you, Mr. Hanisi, for that beautiful blessing. I also want to acknowledge all our Hindu colleagues and participants for the beautiful, beautiful festival of Diwali, which was celebrated yesterday, the beautiful festival of light. And I feel that that has also been a very special blessing on our forum, that beautiful tradition of the Hindu tradition. And welcome also, as Des said, to all other traditions, all other beliefs, and in whatever way you find your awe and wonder in the face of the beauty and complexity of nature. And so, colleagues, you might have seen with the beautiful work that Fulu and others have done as the program arrived in your inboxes, lots of images of groups of living beings flocking and swarming and shoaling together. And you might have also have seen in our beautiful countdown video, those images of those beautiful complex formations made up of, in some instances, thousands and thousands and thousands of living beings dancing together moving together toward their goals to fulfill their highest potential. And so we're asking this morning, how can we do that? The most important collection, we always say the most important collection of all the collections is this collection. The collection of the stewards of the collections, the collection of the curators and of the everybody who's involved in the NSCF community. That's the collection that Des and I feel most passionate about. We're not so tuned in to all the bats and moths and fish and hojas and other things that many of you have such deep passion for. We are very passionate about you. And so the theme for this year's forum is this theme of flocking together, moving together as a large group of independent, autonomous human beings who are each a complex system unto themselves, but also form part of institutions. Michelle explained the complexity of the different institutions, where we all find ourselves in terms of our governance structures, big and small, urban and rural. And then also, of course, to then make up the very complex system of the NSCF itself. And so we're going to ask Chanel and Fulu to just replay that countdown video for us, just to remind us again of the beauty and the splendor of how we can dance and flow and move together. So colleagues, the question is, having witnessed those spectacular movements of our sisters and brothers in the natural world, what makes that possible? What makes possible that complex systems can move in harmony like that toward this? Complex systems require very simple principles to be effective, to transform, to grow, to achieve their goals. It goes against the grain. One wants to think the more complex something is, the more complex the principles are that will be involved. but actually complex systems require very simple principles. And we share with you flocking behavior. Exactly, Angus. It is cooperation, and what makes cooperation possible? And the first thing is that you have to form the flock, and the only way you form the flock is by taking individual responsibility to participate, to take responsibility for yourself and for your institution. And so the principle there is autonomy. That is where we start. We start with a degree of autonomy and taking responsibility for the self. Then the second principle is what's referred to as alignment, that we all have to move in the general direction of the flock, in the general direction of our goal. And we have our goal very clearly encapsulated in the beautiful collections manual that so many people co-created in yet another very beautiful flocking way. We formed the flock, we've taken responsibility for ourselves, we're moving in the general direction of our purpose and our goals. The next principle is incredibly important. You need to stay close and connected to your neighbors. You need to orientate yourself via your neighbors. Relationships and social cohesion is the absolute critical factor. You don't want to bump into your neighbors. You don't want to transgress and violate your neighbors, but you want to be close and connected to your neighbors. And that requires the theme of social cohesion, and it also brings in the theme of communication and connection. And then the last principle is that flocks and shoals always take turns. Who's at the front? Who is leading? Lead a flock over thousands and thousands of kilometers. They lead whilst they have the energy, and then they fall back and let somebody else take over. So this principle of shared leadership is critical to flocking behavior. And what the scientists tell us is that if we adhere to these four basic principles, we will mimic the beautiful. And so the next slide just shows us how we have thought about this forum for the next 4 days. And so we have 4 days of forum, and we have 4 main principles of flocking. And we have divided the 4 days into the 4 principles. So today we are looking at the principle of forming the flock, coming back together, looking back to where we've been and moving to. Tomorrow, to the principle of alignment, being purpose, being in this. The team came up with this lovely theme of honking is helpful. Staying close to our neighbors and communicating with our neighbors. And day 4, shared leadership, further together as leaders.
So here we are. This is the day 1. And for day 1, it is really an orientation day. It's an introduction day. So we'll also be doing a quick round of check-in just after this. The first session will really be about where we have come from, and there's a video and some reflections for after the video. Then we'll have a very welcome tea break and a stretch break. And after that, we'll go into session 2, where we are sharing about the Ikokwana initiative and the assessment tool and how we have conceptualized it. And this is really the space for you to also give your input and discuss how you have received it. So we'll be doing quite a bit of introduction around the tool, the assessment tool. And then we close the day with the competition announcement. And yes, I think there's been some background competition energy that we also wanted to bring into this space. So that's what the day looks like, and we end at 1 o'clock.
So we want to just, as we normally do, provide everybody in the room with an opportunity to bring their voices in. We're going to just spend 10 minutes in small breakout rooms, just 3 people to a room. And you've just got 3 questions. My arriving here this morning, what are you bringing with you this morning? What your intention is for the 4 mornings that we have together, and what struck you about the principles of flocking and about the design of our 4 days of forum. So we'll be about three in a room. You just hit on the join button that is going to pop up on your screen, and we will just have 10 minutes in those small groups just to bring our voices in and to greet 2 colleagues. For those colleagues who are working together on one laptop, maybe you could just divide yourselves into groups of 2 or 3 just to do the check-in where you are in your offices, just so that everybody has an opportunity to meet, to greet, and to become present to our conversations today.
Welcome back, and I hope that your little check-in group was useful and fruitful. Thanks, Angus. I see you say you had a cool group. I hope everyone else had a cool group and you were able to connect and meet people and hear from them. So we won't have time to take feedback. I mean, you're welcome to just put in the chat, how was it in the group? You know, you can just pop that into the chat. We won't be able to hear from everyone right now. We will be hearing from you later on, I'm sure. So I'm going to hand over to Michelle. Michelle, you're going to introduce the DSI video for us. So over to you.
We're going to be showing a video that was made by Margaret, Nick, and Fulu from the NSCF Hub team. And they did this as part of an external review of the Natural Science Collection Facility that was done by the Department of Science and Innovation. So the DSI, the Department of Science and Innovation, are the funder of the NSCF, and it's part of their research infrastructure roadmap program. So the NSCF is one of the first projects that was launched in 2017. There were another 5 that were also launched at the same time. And so they had said after 5 years, they need to do an assessment of these projects. And they had some external evaluators. One was international, one was a local professor who did an assessment, and they asked for a video that showed a whole lot of different aspects. We had to write a report. They did a site visit, and we used SIAB for that site visit. So they went to SIAB and looked at the collections there. And we thank our colleagues at SIAB for that. And they really wanted to see whether we've made progress in meeting our objectives. So our objectives about securing collections, about the data upgrades, data expansion, providing access and promoting access to our collections for research, promoting access to the data for research, and then the virtual museum and imaging of specimens and capacity development. And so they wanted to see how much have we actually achieved. So we haven't had any feedback from them yet. We've done everything we needed to do, but we really thought that it would be great to share this video that was made by 3 of our team, by Margaret and Nick and Fulu.
Welcome to the Natural Science Collections Facility. Our friends call us the NSCF, so please feel free to do so too. The NSCF is a network with partner institutions scattered all over South Africa. Hence, we are a virtual facility with a very real-world impact. These 16 institutions house a variety of natural science collections, which includes plant and fungi specimens at herbaria, insects, mammals, birds and reptiles, fossils, skins, skeletons, and skulls at museums. These collections form part of South Africa's scientific heritage, assembled piece by piece over 200 years, and represent life on Earth since its origins. The NSCF aims to ensure that they are available for use by researchers and communities alike.
For the first time, we're putting the outputs and the use of collections, we're integrating the data across the 16 institutions that are participating in the NSCF, working as a collective and pulling all the stories together to present a very powerful story about why these collections are so important.
We do this by helping to develop well-curated and accessible collections, upgraded, expanded, and openly accessible specimen databases, an online virtual museum, accurate identification of biological specimens, and an increased understanding of the value of collections to society.
One thing that I would like everybody to know about the NSCF is that this is a very innovative, different approach to natural science collection. The research infrastructure is considered a big, very highly sophisticated piece of equipment that sits in a room or in a building, and it's used by scientists. Our research infrastructure is the collections and the associated data. It's scattered across 16 institutions. It's ancient, it's not highly sophisticated modern technology, but it's critical research infrastructure, and we have to work to promote that concept. So it's not just about having a piece of equipment, it's about changing perceptions, cultures, ways of working, ways of doing things.
To secure collections, appropriate research equipment and facilities are required. This is why part of our budget goes to sponsoring partner institutions with equipment like SEM, microscopes, X-ray machines, cameras, and so on. Data associated with specimens is as crucial as the specimens themselves. Central to the purpose of the NSCF is digitizing specimen collections and mobilizing specimen records on the internet for wider access by the South African and global research communities. Handling specimens causes wear and tear, and museums often do not loan out their type specimens. Therefore, by photographing type specimens and providing those images online, they can be more easily accessed and used. Damage to the specimens is prevented, and the images can serve as a form of insurance against the loss or destruction of the specimen.
These collections are irreplaceable. So if they're lost, you can't build a new collection going back, because many of the places where these specimens were collected no longer exist. They've been built over or destroyed in some other way. They are completely irreplaceable, and they're completely essential for documenting the biodiversity in our country.
Many collections have backlogs of unprocessed specimens that need to be incorporated into the main collection. These specimen backlogs require sorting, preparation, identification, and labeling of specimens and data capture into the main collections database. To date, almost 100,000 plant specimens have been captured, and several thousand vertebrate specimens, primarily reptiles and amphibians, have been incorporated into collections. Managing all this data requires appropriate software systems. The NSCF has developed a comprehensive data standard based largely on the International Darwin Core Standard and is currently implementing this in collections databases. This includes developing efficient and comprehensive workflows for data management activities such as data capture and cleaning, data sharing, and data backups. The end goal of all the digitization work in the collections is to provide specimen records and images online from a single portal, which would be a virtual museum. That way, they galvanize the collections community in South Africa around open data sharing and improved curation of their digital resources, and may be used by researchers and applied disciplines to solve problems that are important to society and help ensure that all South Africans are able to access our scientific heritage.
It doesn't mean you can throw away the physical specimens. It just means that now the whole world can actually have access to your collections. And so that hopefully will increase the use of the collections and the data, and it will also increase the ability of anybody, no matter who they are, as long as they've got an internet connection, to see and to explore these incredible collections. That will help us to explain to everybody, whether it's a decision maker, a funding agency, school children, that we've got these collections and how they've been used and how they could be used.
Beautiful as South Africa may be, our country carries a deep history of colonialism and oppression, which is deeply entrenched in the museum community. These colonial legacies have shaped museum cultures and practices, and even the buildings, and are still alive today. In order to achieve our goals, we need to break down the colonial way of working.
The collections community, so the staff that worked in these collections, were very stuck in a culture of negativity. They couldn't see any solutions, they could just see problems. Collection institutions worked almost completely in isolation from each other. There was no collaboration or interaction across institutions. And even within institutions, the different collections, the staff there didn't interact with each other. So it was very isolated and very fragmented. We can help each other to solve these problems. We can support each other. We can lobby and we can find solutions together.
Therefore, building the NSCF network is crucial. We do this through a WhatsApp group that helps everyone in the network keep in contact. A forum where institutions and individuals come together to share knowledge, and an organizational development journey where transformation professionals guide the hub in exploring values of open access, collaboration, relevance, and translational research that serves society.
So I think the highlights of the project, there've been many. The one would be the forum. It was a really exciting event because it wasn't a traditional conference. It was something we used a very different approach. We focused a lot on discussing and thinking about the challenges and the solutions and having difficult conversations about discrimination and exclusion. And I think it was the first time that many of the staff from the institutions had been exposed to these kinds of topics, but also the first time that they'd had an opportunity to have a voice and to be listened to and to be recognized. The second highlight would probably be the publication and finalization of the collection management and curation manual that the NSCF put together. It was a very engaging process of putting that manual together, and I think that gives people a sense of ownership of it. It's our sort of guiding document for the collections and the data going forward.
But what is the glue that holds all these 16 institutions together? That would be the coordinating hub, a small but dedicated team of passionate people who are grateful for the chance to do their bit towards a huge goal. We asked a few people to share their perspective of the NSCF.
Heritage is important, or at least museums are important, because museums are these houses of like expert knowledge, and they're sharing and informing the public on what knowledge they have, and so the public can also engage and question, critique what's in the museum. It's not just there to be looked at, but it's there for the public to engage. Because when you go into a museum, you just think, oh, the exhibition space is it. That's the whole museum. But then you go in the back, and then there's all the collection and conservation areas and spaces, and you're like, wow, it's not just for the public. There's also, the museum is also there for research. So I haven't directly worked with the NSCF, but the handbook from the NSCF that Aisha gave to me, that was helpful in informing my research project and looking at policy that has been put in place already. I didn't know about collections management before, I just heard about it. So that was like a nice overview, just looking through that. I think it's important to have like this overarching body that kind of communicates with all these different institutions. So it's not just one institution working in isolation and then changing things by themselves, and that change doesn't really translate to the rest of the country. Having the NSCF at the top and then kind of communicating these changes to all the different institutions that are part of it is important, because you kind of can get that change translated throughout the country.
The collections manual developed by the NSCF really helps us to get the collections up to standard. The webinars that we have every month is really excellent, just to help us work through it step by step. And then of course there's also the courses that the NSCF presents, like this collections course that one of my staff attends, and several staff members are getting the chance to sit on committees of the NSCF and attend forums, and the exposure and experience they get is tremendous. The change management workshops really help me to understand other people and their situations, which maybe before I never thought of it in that way. Sometimes you wonder what's going to happen with the collections if I'm not there anymore, but I know now there's someone who will look out for it.
The NSCF gave me a voice. I realized that my voice mattered. My first impression of the NSCF was that of an inclusive framework. Whenever I think about the NSCF, I think the word inclusivity springs. You know, it was for the people, for everyone that work in natural science collections. One of the things that were thrilled to us in almost all the sessions was to understand that we come to the process as leaders. That gave us a confidence to speak and make contributions. My involvement in the NSCF gave me a new sense of purpose and a renewed determination to aspire for more in life and in my career. I managed to complete my MSc, passed with distinction, and thereafter got this role as collections manager. SIAB is grateful to be part of the network.
When you discover how ancient some of the specimens are in the herbarium, you can actually understand why they are still in such good quality, because the staff members are very dedicated and they're very meticulous. The NSCF, by protecting the natural collections, I feel that they are also protecting research studies that we might not know of yet, but we will discover in the future. With my pollen research, I can collect pollen from a single herbarium specimen, and I can do alpha taxonomy on the pollen morphology, but that can also be used in evolutionary studies. It can be used for phylogenetic and systematic studies. It can be applied in forensic science, melissopalenology, even medicine. One herbarium specimen holds the key to quite a variety of research projects that are available.
But What has been the impact of all this work? What has it all been for? And where do we go from here?
For our country, we have such a diverse flora and one that is part of the, the floral kingdoms recognized across the world. For us not to be having good collections and maintaining our flora, our botanical collections at least, but also obviously the zoological ones, would be a crime. Collections are crucial because they provide a wide variety of specimens from a range of distributions. We could not do the work that we do without them. It's extremely valuable.
To the taxonomy, a herbarium specimen is, the PCR sequencer for the molecular biologists. They are the bread and butter, and without them, we cannot do the work. From the point of view of unlocking the bioeconomy, to has been stewards that we're living on a planet, on a continent, in a country which has heritage for ourselves, for our current uses, but heritage for future generation, for uses that we know, but also uses that might arise in their environment. Then we need to safeguard it. And the only way we can safeguard it is by strengthening the collections and the facilities that we have to respond to that. As a researcher, I would say, for a biodiversity-rich country as South Africa, and as continent of Africa actually, for us to fully realize the value of our heritage, we need to know what we have. Natural science collection facilities are that place that happens.
Wow, thank you. Thank you. I always feel so moved when I watch that. I think it's the 4th time I've seen it, but it's just I can just say that it brings up so many emotions. So we're going to go into a reflection group now, where you'll be able to share your feelings and what came up for you. So I'm going to ask Chanel to just put up the reflection slide, and then we'll be putting you into groups. I'm watching the comments. People are really, just congratulating the NSCF on this video. So these are the questions. So we want you to just share in your group. What did you love? What did you learn? And then what is lingering for you? So what questions came up? What concerns you? What do you need to think more about after watching that? And then what gratitude can you offer after seeing that video? Okay.
So colleagues, before we go to tea, before we have our tea break, we thought we would just invite 2 or 3 voices in just to hear from our community, and also invite you to share in the chat anything that comes to mind, anything you loved, anything you learned, anything that's still lingering for you, or a gratitude that you wanted to express. We were just basking again in how proud that video makes one feel to be associated with this work, the sacred work that we were reminded about this morning during our blessing, how sacred this work is that we're doing. So we'd love to hear just 1 or 2 contributions before we go to tea.
Hi, everyone. It's Christina here from the Herbarium at UKZN. Our, our group loved the video, but the one positive suggestion that was made was, not by me, by another group member, was that this message needs to actually go out possibly in more languages. So we thought if there was a way perhaps to do the general voiceover in different sort of some of the indigenous languages, and then possibly then when you have people that are being interviewed that are speaking, perhaps they could have subtitles. That was a thought from us, because it's such a lovely resource. It would be lovely to share it, but perhaps in more of our national languages would be great.
Thank you, Christina. That's a wonderful suggestion. Thank you very much. That's a wonderful suggestion. We'll definitely think about how to make that, what's possible in that regard.
The one thing that I thought was very strange in our group was, which was very interesting, was, you know, there's a lot of emphasis on transformation and a lot of emphasis on working together, but, you know, we work together so well. And I think some history is probably required, Michelle, particularly for the onboarding of new people, as to where the collections have come from. You know, it's a very different space now than it was. There's still tremendous work to be done on the transformation side and gender parity and all those things. But compared to where we were in 2010, and also when we started in 2017, for people that are joining now, I think we need to also remind them of where we came from, what state the collections were, what triggered the whole NSCF in terms of your review in, I think, 2009 or 2010. So I think at some stage we need a little bit of more of an onboarding process of individuals that have joined in the last 2 years. To understand the history of the collections and why we put so much effort on cohesiveness and on transformation. So it was a very interesting discussion, and the comment came out, sure, there's a lot of emphasis on this, and I said, yeah, well, we've needed it, but it also shows that we have come quite a long way.
Thanks, Angus. Thank you for that. Yes, thank you for that. And Michelle is going to touch a little bit on some of that history after tea, when we introduced the idea of the assessment process, which is our next big challenge that we have as a network together to journey together, to journey with and alongside and with each other together through this journey of the assessments. And there's a little bit of history there, but I hear what you're saying about particularly around the transformation theme, and a little bit more context and background for those who are joining, why it is so important that this theme of inclusivity is so very much central to our conversations. I see there's a comment in the chat from Maxine. Love that the video was inclusive, the diversity of people. Gratitude to the NSCF team for getting all 17 institutions connected, and the importance of the forum, the importance of meeting together like this. So thanks for that, Maxine. Oh, one more. We'd love to hear one more voice before we go to tea.
Hello everyone, my name is Koliwe Tugula. I'm from the Compton Herbarium. I'll add on what Angus has said. I'm new with the NSF group. I've started here in 2020, the time of COVID-19, right 26 days before the closure of the country. So for me, being involved in NSCF started last year, which was partial. Having to see what is everyone doing, I've got a clear understanding of what is NSCF was. Having to read and having all these emails coming, what is NSCF? What are we doing? What are these people? What is it all about? Not having a clear understanding, but this video has just summarized everyone in a way, and now it has brought an interest to know more about the other institutions. What are they doing? What are they all about? And what makes us to come together? That's how I feel. And from the group as well, we're praising the work that NSF has put together for all these 17 institutions to produce such a wonderful and beautiful video. Also, one of the things that has come up is that most people, like, they don't understand what we're doing. Having seen all these and what are the institutions doing, when we're having the people from outside in the scholars, they don't really understand what kind of science we're doing, what kind of work we're doing. They become puzzled. And for me, the learning part is that we need to do more just to take it out to the people so that they can get to see and understand what we're doing in our institutions. Thank you.
Beautiful, Koliwe. Thank you so much. Welcome, 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 welcome to the flock. It's wonderful that you have joined us, and it's wonderful that the video has that effect of actually really kind of sharing and articulating and putting all of these different pieces together, and that it's helped you, and that means that it's going to help many, many others to see all the different parts together. Fred also says that he loves the attempt that was taken to reflect all the different institutions, and that already the principle of shared leadership is already reflected in the video, which I think is so beautiful. That's such a beautiful observation, Fred. So colleagues, thank you. That was our first session of our fourth forum. The theme for this first session was, where have we come from? And that video captured for us to some degree. Angus has reminded us there's more history there to be told. We're going to have tea until 11:15. And at 11:15, if you could all be back. And then we're going to ask the question, where are we going? Where are we heading? What is the next challenge that is lying ahead for us collectively as the NSCF? See you at 11:15.
So I hope you had a good tea, coffee, stretch, and you're ready for our session 2. So I'm handing over to Michelle, who will take us into session 2, and it's all about the assessments. So Michelle, I know you and the team will be taking us through a few slides.
Thanks, Des. All right, so I think we've spoken about some of the highlights, and you saw in the video that the collection management and care manual that was developed through the NSCF was one of our big milestones, one of our big highlights over the last 5 years. And at the last forum, we spoke a lot about implementation of the manual, and over the last 2 years now, we've had webinars and a training course. So what we're going to be talking about now is our sort of next step forward, and that's collection assessment of the collections. So some of you might have been exposed to this idea or this proposal. And so we're going to be just presenting some background and some of the work that we've been doing on it. So I'll be talking about the purpose and the principles of this collections assessment. Why do we want to do it? What are we thinking about? Angus briefly referred to the previous collection assessment that was done, but there have been several attempts in the past to do an assessment of the natural science collections in South Africa. So what is the status of them? And in 1999, there was one. There were questionnaires that were sent to the curators and asked them to give input on the overall rating for the collection. So is it well looked after, not well looked after? What's the data? So it was just a questionnaire that was sent out. And then also asked, like, what do you need for research on the collections, and what do you need for the collections to look after them? So The next assessment was done in 2005, and that was through something that was called the South African Biosystematics Initiative, or SABI, and that was run through the NRF. And it was done by questionnaires that were sent to the curators, and they were asked to answer a whole lot of questions. And that was coordinated by consultants that were hired through the NRF. And it looked at what's the collection scope. So what does the collection cover? And has it got a database? And how much of the collection is in the database? And how often is the collection used? And then also how many staff and what's the budget? So that was also, again, questionnaires. And then in 2009, the NRF, the National Research Foundation, commissioned an in-depth assessment of the status of the collections. And that was done by a consulting company, but that company hired several of us. I was one of the people who was, because I was working at SANBI, I was involved in doing the assessment for the zoology collections. That process ran from 2009 to 2011. And it was a very, very detailed assessment. I think there were over 150 questions that had to be answered. And it was done by site visits and inspections. So the sort of experts in the different areas went to each collection and looked at the condition of the collections, asked questions about how much budget do you get, how many staff have you got, how many loans do you send out, what's the status of the database. So that was a very detailed document that was developed with analyses, and that's a picture of it on the right there, Collecting Now to Preserve the Future. It was published in 2011. So that was the last assessment that was done. So it's now almost 12 years old, 13 years since the collections were last assessed. And since that time, there has been a lot that has happened with the collections. So very soon after the publication of that report, the NRF realized that there was a need for investment in at least the museums. And so they allocated 15 million rand over 3 years for the Natural Science Museum. So that was between 2014 and 2016. And then the Natural Science Collection Facility was established in 2017, but there'd been 2 years of consultation. So it wasn't like it just started. We got together the leaders, we had other workshops with people. And so there was lots of discussion about what we should do and why we needed to do it. And over the past 5 years, there's been just on 100 million rand investment, 100 million rand investment from the Department of Science and Innovation in the NSCF. So a huge amount of money has been invested. And then we've also had the manual that was published in 2021, and we've been running the training course for implementation. So it's not just a course, but it's also offered webinars and discussion forums, assignments, just to help people, to provide them with guidance for implementing the manual. And then Ian has run a lot of training courses in the use of Specify and data cleaning, and there's been assistance with developing data workflows. So there's been a lot of work that's been going and a lot of financial investments in the natural science collections. There's also been the Foundational Biodiversity Information Program. Some of you might have accessed funds from that. That was established in 2013. And it's provided funding for digitization of collections and for specimen imaging and for research in collections. After all of that, we know where we came from in 2009 and 2011. That's where we were. There's been all this work, all this investment. And now we need to have an understanding of where we're at now in 2023. So we need to identify which aspects of the collections need additional investment or intervention. So where do we now put our attention? And that's for strategy and for planning for the NSCF. So the NSCF is intended as a long-term project, a long-term investment in the collections. And we need to know what do we do now. So also assessing the collections will provide institutions with inputs on the status of their collection, highlighting good practice, and then also highlighting what needs attention. So that will allow institutions to plan and to allocate their resources, to motivate for more resources, maybe from their funding agency. It will allow them to intervene where there may be a need, and it also helps them with reporting. So the assessment information can be used by both the NSCF, but also by institutions for their own purposes. We also think that having an assessment will be a catalyst for the implementation process for the manual. So if there's a kind of a need to do it, then it might push it more. And then obviously we need to report to the DSI, to the Department of Science and Innovation, as a funder, on whether the investment that they've made has made any difference to the collections. So I should have probably said, when that 2009 assessment was initiated, it was initiated because there had been so many letters raising concerns about the status of the collections in South Africa. So that had come from the research community and from the collections community, saying there's a problem. There's a problem with the security and the long-term sustainability of these collections. And that's why the NRF commissioned that report. That's also one of the reasons why the DSI decided to establish the NSCF under the funding program. So now they want to know, has this been resolved? Has this changed after all of this investment and work? So we have to be responsible, we have to be accountable, we're taking taxpayers' money, and we have to be able to say what impact it's had, not just that we've spent the money, but what impact does it have on the collections. So what is the purpose of this collection assessment? You've seen, I've just explained the reason why we need it, but what is the purpose of it? So what we're thinking now is not to just produce a report like we did with the 2011 report. We believe that just having a questionnaire that is sent to the different institutions it'll have limited real impact. Hiring consultants to go and do an assessment for us will have limited impact. We think that if we have an action learning and capacity building process as part of the assessment, this will have a real long-lasting impact. So much more than just having a written report. So technical skills, yes, you can teach people how to measure ethanol concentration, how to prepare a mammal skin, how to prepare fossils, but there's a lot more that's relevant for working in the collections. So if we have staff involved in doing the assessment, staff involved in critically reflecting on what comes out, and the staff involved in finding the solutions and implementing those solutions, that becomes a very, very good action learning and capacity development process. Also, it can be a very powerful institutional strengthening process. So working with the outcome of the assessment, instead of just having a paper report and not knowing what to do with it, if we can work with institutions, it can be important. And then also enhancing the networking, community building work of the NSCF. So everybody has an interest in all the other institutions and their collections. So researchers working on one group use the collections from other institutions. You don't only work on your own collection. You use the data from other collections. And then also if one institution starts to fail and the collections go down, and that gets out, it impacts on everybody, the reputational damage, the questions that will be asked. So we're all in this together. We all have a responsibility for all the collections. We all have a stake in the process of the collections assessment, and we all have a stake in the outcome of that assessment process. So what are the principles? What are kind of guiding rules for the process of this collections assessment? So credibility of the data collected. So the data must be credible. So there must be some consistency in the approach that's used and in the standards that are applied across in collections and institutions. So we can't have different people setting different standards and one thinking something is good while another one thinks it's poor. We all have to have the same sort of standards and consistency. As I've said, it must be a capacity development process, so a learning process. It must be inclusive and collaborative. So it's not like that hub team are going to do this assessment. It's all of us as a NSCF community being involved. So we're going to work together to co-create the process, and we'll be doing some of that work this week. To co-create the assessment tool. So what's the tool that we're going to use? We work with staff to do the assessment, and then to include all the staff associated with the collections in the process. This isn't only the technicians, the collection managers, it's also about the researchers who are the people whose work depends on these collections. They also need to be involved in the process. It must be a transparent process. There should not be secret ways of doing things. But we do also understand that there may be some aspects of the assessment that may need to be kept confidential. We don't know how we'll balance that. And then it must be transformative. So it must have impact beyond just getting a report. So we've got to move forward. We've got to transform things from where they were to a better place. And that may be beyond just the collections. And then it must be iterative possibilities. So it's not like we've done the assessment and that's the end of it and finished. It's not a once-off kind of process. We want it to be an ongoing kind of process that becomes embedded into institutional processes. It'll be become a way that we work in the future. At this point, I'm going to hand over to the people who developed the naming and branding for this process. Thanks.
Thank you, Michelle. So my name is Fulukaro Tambani, and I'm the science communications person for the NSCF. I'm just going to explain or walk you through the thinking behind the branding and the naming of the collections assessments that we are going to be embarking on. So before I start, I just wanted to reiterate some of the key words that Michelle mentioned that guided us in the process or in our thinking. So it was from the purpose and the principles of the assessments. So it's responsibility, networking and community building, action learning process, institution strengthening, credibility, capacity building or capacity development, inclusivity, transparency, and transformative. So in our thinking of naming and branding this process, we had to consider all those words, all those concepts, and try as much as possible to have the branding and the naming express or show all this. So this is the branding that we ended up coming up with. It was myself and Nick and the Hub team. So we wanted the NSCF logo to be in the middle, but also use that as a way of associating the collections assessments to the NSCF and not have something that's separate. So it was important to show that these assessments are a part of the NSCF as a whole and not something separate. And then we incorporated the birds there to show the idea of flocking and the idea of bringing different people and different institutions that we are together to do something that is common. And just to note that flocking is shown or proved to, or proven to have benefits of feeding and protection for the individuals. And I just included that video of the flocking just to bring the idea of flocking again together, just so you can connect with what can happen when different individuals get to come together and work on a common purpose. And then the name of the initiative we came up with, Ixoxwana, and it was derived from the word ixoxo, which we fell in love with first, but then unfortunately we found that the name was already taken, but then we ended up with Ixoxwana, which really also sits well with us as a network because it means a small group. So we thought being different groups that are in the different institutions coming together, that is a good representation of who and what we are as a network. And the word Ixoxo means a collection or a group. So that just expresses who we are as a network. And then initiative, it was important for us to include the word initiative because we wanted to show that this is a new action learning journey that we are starting, and it is ongoing. It's not going to stop at a certain point. It's ongoing, and we wanted to inspire people to take initiative and be forward-looking. So taking initiative in your different institutions, in your different kinds of work, but having this one purpose that we share. And then next will be the tagline. So it is saving our past, securing our future. And this is just explaining that our collections are a representation of the past. And this past, we are working every day to save in order for future generations to have the knowledge, and it will help them to know and understand their heritage, which is something important that we are working at, as well as develop new innovations and improvements for a better future. So for future generations to have quality collections that are well preserved, well cared for, that is our heritage that we are leaving for our kids and our grandkids. So the past, the present, and the future. And to bring all these together, the Ixoxwana initiative signifies the coming together of small groups of people from the different collections and institutions working together for a common purpose. And this purpose is conducting these collections assessments with the purpose of learning and improving the state of the collections. And that is it from me. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ian Engelbrecht, and I'm the data coordinator for the NSCF. So I'm just going to be taking you through the steps that we've followed for developing the preliminary assessment tool. So we need some kind of way that we're actually going to do this assessment, and we've been calling this the assessment tool. It's based on the NSCF manual. Everything is derived directly from the contents of the NSCF manual, as we've essentially agreed as a community that the manual is the standard for collections management in the country. It's been quite a process up until now. What we did was we worked as a team within the NSCF hub to extract possible questions from the manual that could be used for assessing collections. So we divided the different chapters between different members of the team. Each person went through the chapter, pulled out all the questions that they thought could be asked related to that chapter. People then got together in pairs to review those questions and to make sure that they had everything covered. And then we drew everything together into one big document at the end. Now, what's very important here, I've got the sections section up here on the slide. So there are several different sections to this assessment questionnaire at the moment. The first one is just looking at preliminaries. So that's things like which institution you're at and which collections you're assessing. It asks for a little bit of background information for those collections, what kind of collections there are, and so on. The next section is the documentation related to the collections. So these are all of the workflows and forms and registers and all of that kind of stuff that you need to have for a particular collection. It then looks at staffing, so issues around staffing of the collections. Are they sufficiently staffed? Do you have enough people and manpower to be managing that collection adequately? It looks at buildings and collection spaces. So that's the state of health of the actual buildings, various aspects of the sort of conditions under which the collections are kept, the type of shelving and, the climatic conditions, fire suppression systems, all of that kind of stuff. And then it's got a big section on the actual collection management. So these are all of the requirements for how particular types of collections are managed, whether they're wet collections or dry collections or slide collections or fossil collections and so on. All of the detail associated with how those kinds of collections are cared for. It's then got a section on data and image management. So that's related to what proportion of the collection is data-based and is the database following standards, and are the data being shared in appropriate formats, and most importantly, are the data being published? And then the last section is about visitors and loans. So that's obviously about, that's your collection access in terms of having people come and visit the collection, as well as processes around loaning material to people. So it's quite a comprehensive document. When we started off, I tried to reduce it down to a very sort of succinct set of questions, and it was 3.5 pages long. And then we looked at that and decided that it would be better to have many more questions, but to make those questions much more specific and easy to answer. So what's important is that this document is still very much a draft. We've worked on it quite extensively within the hub team. We've presented it to the directors at our directors meeting. But the next step, which is really important, is that we now need inputs from the broader community of collection staff within the partner institutions with the NSCF, and that's you guys. In terms of how this is going to be scored, we haven't finalized the mechanisms for scoring it. But basically, we're going to come up with a way that each question will be scored. What we said is that it should be simple. The criteria should be the criteria should be clear. Again, the manual is the standard for how questions are actually answered. So if we do have any points of contention where People might feel that there's some disagreement about what the score for a particular question should be. We should be referring back to the manual as the standard. Now, just about the process a little bit, is we're wanting people to undertake these assessments of their collections independently and on their own as a first round of assessment. So the idea is that the questions will be made available. People will undertake the assessments themselves, going through the whole questionnaire. So it's that's an opportunity to self-assess, essentially. However, there will also be a follow-up process where an assessment moderation panel will visit the different institutions and visit the collection managers and work through their assessments with them, just to make sure that things have been assessed correctly and questions have been answered correctly and scores allocated correctly. While developing this tool, we kind of went through a couple of iterations of sort of what platform should we be using to do this assessment? What would be the best way to have people answer these questions and to gather all of that information together and kind of synthesize all of that information together? And we kind of looked at having a very low tech option, a medium tech option, and a high tech option. So the low tech option would be to simply use paper questionnaires. So you would have your clipboard and a pen, and you would work in your collection to answer all of the questions on your paper questionnaire. The medium tech option would be to use something like Google Forms. And what Google Forms does is allow you to gather all of the feedback on the questionnaire on spreadsheets, and then we would manually review all of that feedback to come up with actual scores for the individual assessments. And then we also looked at the option of having a custom built assessment tool. So the two images that I've got on the slide here, the one on the left is a simple Google form, and the one on the right is sort of a mock-up or a trial of a custom built tool, which I developed and we played around with a little bit. But we decided after the meetings that we had with the directors that we should go with the medium tech option, which is to use Google Forms. So now most people in this group have got experience using Google Forms. It is a very nice platform for running questionnaires and surveys and things like that. So that is a plus point. But this is going to be the largest Google form that you have ever seen. So just as a sneak peek of what's to come, we're going to be returning to the assessment tool on Friday to have a little bit of a practical exercise, to play around with it and to start getting feedback from the group of people here on the tool. There are two aspects to that. The first is we've drawn up a small mock-up Google form just to give people an opportunity to try out the Google form, to see the format that it's going to take, and to get a feel for what working with the Google form for conducting an assessment like this might be. Very important is that this is just a mock-up. People can play with it. They can put whatever answers in that they like. It doesn't matter. None of this is being recorded. You'll see that it's anonymous. And essentially what we're wanting to do there is get your feedback on your experience with working with the actual Google form, and whether you might actually have suggestions of other kinds of platforms that you feel might be a better option for us to look at. It's just, the Google form is just a trial. It's not the actual questionnaire. The second thing that we want people to have a look at is the Google Doc. So on the right-hand side there, I've got a screenshot of the first page from our Google Doc, which is the actual questions that we're wanting to have a look at. Here we've got questions divided into several different types. We have checkbox type questions, and we've got multiple choice type questions, and we've got text field questions where people can enter sort of more detailed information. And we also need people's input on that. However, that is currently 30 pages long. It's a 30-page questionnaire. We're not going to have time within the forum this week for people to look at that. So what we're going to do after the session, so we are going to trial the Google Forms on Friday, and then we're just going to do a very short tutorial on how to work with a Google Doc for people who aren't familiar with that process. And so you can trial the Google Doc. You know, you'll see exactly how to make comments and how to make changes and all of that kind of stuff. And then we're going to send out an email afterwards to everybody to please look at that in the next sort of week or two after the forum. And that will be the opportunity to provide feedback on the actual questions that we're asking for the assessment. What's important with that also is to please, we don't have everybody in the institutions with us in the forum for the next few days. So we do want to give people who aren't here an opportunity to provide feedback as well. So that email that goes out is going to go out to the entire community. And I'm going to ask also that the people attending here will also engage with their colleagues who are not here and discuss with them the process and provide the opportunity to provide feedback and so on that document. Okay, that's it from me then.
We are going to go into breakaway groups. And so these are the questions that we are asking for you to address. So what becomes possible through the Ikwana initiative? And then what comes up for you around the purposes and the principles of this initiative? And then how could this initiative serve you and your institution? And what investment are you willing to make in this journey? Enjoy your discussions. Great, welcome back. We hope that you had good conversations. And so just a reminder that this is the first round of conversations and discussions. And we will be doing some more on Friday. So Friday, we have some more space for us to go a little bit deeper into the assessment tool, the process. And so this is just the first round of conversations. Okay, so I think we can maybe just hear from a few of you if there are any comments. And then we will just share a little bit more about the change management process side of it.
Good afternoon now, everyone. I'm hoping you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Perfect. There is like a cry from the group that I was in for managers to not only be maybe part of, maybe it's too late for them to be actually part of the actual course, and that's fine. But if they could be, whether it's part of meetings or just have an understanding as to how demanding the work actually is in terms of time. So if colleagues could be given time to actually do the work that's required of them in terms of the course. So I was basically explaining our assignment versus manual implementation journey, and that it wouldn't have been possible without the involvement of Yashika and, Dr. Singh, and her just allowing us the time and freedom to do this in the way that we have. We wouldn't have been able to progress as much as we have. And people need to understand that change only happened this year. I think we've been doing the course since last year, and we were doing it individually, and that did not work. I think out of a staff complement of more than 10, and I think 10 being herbarium staff, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was 4 of us, Maxine, you could correct me, 4 of us, if not 5, who had submitted. And so we had people that were registered, that hadn't had time to do any work, and we had staff members who were working with the herbarium specimens, but were not registered in the course. So all those changes only happened this year from about Feb, leading from discussions in Feb, March, and then only in April we started. So everything that we've managed to do has actually been from April this year, and that credit has to go, yes, to the amazing teamwork, but the fact that our leader on that front led from the front allowed us to do so. Yeah. So there was a cry. Yeah. Thank
Lovely,
you.
beautiful. Great. That's a really good point, Sanelisiwe. Thank you, and to your group. So yes, any other comments?
Yeah, good day, colleagues. From the group that I was in, it is all thumbs up in terms of the bigger project and the vision that the NSCF is having. The feeling is we need, as we are flocking together, we need to not to forget the higher institutions, whereby we need to take them with through the path that we are taking right now. So institutions of higher learning should at least form part of us so that we handle everything with them. And emphasis again on the collection management course that NSCF is offering, so that the students from higher learning can access it as well, so that they know more about the collection management from tertiary level through the NSCF efforts that they are putting in management of the course. So in general, it's a thumbs up and that recommendation.
Thanks, Mutapo. Thank you very much. Great. Any other comments? And also you can use the chat, you know, so please feel free. We'll pick it up there. Any other? Yeah.
A comment, just one thing that stood out in the group I was in is that they're fully invested in undertaking this process, that the activities that are going to be coming up and the involvement that is needed in order to ensure the success of this process, they are fully invested. And I'm guessing being aware that it's going to be time sensitive because, you know, you still have other responsibilities, but yeah, they're fully in.
Thanks. You. Thanks, Mashwatse. Okay, great. Anything else?
I wanted to add also on wanting to know that will the managers be able to assist us as colleagues to do the outreach programs to schools so that they can be able also, because not all schools are willing to come to our institutes to learn more about whatever that we are doing and what work we are doing. We can also be able to go to other schools that can't be able to come to us, so that we can we can also leave the pamphlets, so that especially the ones that are studying on grade 10 up to grade 12, so that they can know, because not all of us are able to go to colleges or tertiaries, as our institutes are willing to do the voluntary. They do accept people who want to volunteer. That is what we have raised on our group, that we normally don't have the outreach programs where we can go as colleagues or staffs to tell them more about the institution, and also what what we are doing, and also what kind of subject that they must have, so that they can be able to be able to apply for internships if there are internships, or just like as in Groensebenza, because Groensebenza is giving people more opportunities, as I was part of Groensebenza years ago. So I think we can also have outreach, but we need to discuss it with our managers, so that they can be able to give us that opportunity.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. And that's, you know, that sounds like the strategic sort of imperative for the institutions. And I'm hearing this point about management support, managers support. Okay. All right. So I think we're going to move on now and just go into some change, the change management reflections and proposed process that we would, myself and Ilze would be guiding on and providing the facilitation oversight for. So I think we'd like to just start with just reminding ourselves what was said in the manual. So for those, hello?
Sorry, Roger would like to make a comment.
Sorry?
Can you make a comment, Desiree?
Okay.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah,
Yes.
sorry. So when we were discussing investment into what investment we were going to make into the project, one of the things that came up, which to me appeared to be quite important, was that we, at the end of individual projects, we actually communicate well what has come out of that project. And that will help in motivating people to actually invest more into a particular aspect of the program.
Yes, great. That's a very good point. So I'm sure we'll bring some of these the feedback into Friday as well, and it will be captured there. So all of that will go back into the planning for this process. So thank you.
An example of that was, when we did the first round of quarterly reporting, I think that was a bit of a chore. But then at the end of the year, you had the annual report where you produced all those various stats in a really nice, and that was an amazing motivation to us to carry on doing those stats, which I think I'm finding a bit tiring.
Yes, great. Okay, thank you for that point, Roger. All right, so I think just to carry on with just a few slides that we want to share on the change management process. So a reminder about what Michelle was saying in the preface to the collections manual. So, she was talking about, it's how do we take these next steps? So the manual is not the end point, but it's the first step in this new era that we are talking about. And so what will it make it possible to implement the manual in all institutions? And so she speaks about it as, we are midwives of this new era, and that it's going to require, we need to create conditions for this to happen. So how do we do this in each of the participating institutions? And then how do we do it as a collective and as a network of institutions? And then how do we do it as an entire community? And it's so beautiful that we've got everyone in the room here, in the space, community of practitioners, curators, researchers, and managers. And so some people have started working with the manual. Some institutions have been on their journeys of transformation. The NSCF has also been on it. And I think we're at a point now where it's really taking this process deeper now. And of course, with the manual as a guideline. So moving to the next slide, we also want to say that, transformative change requires this diversity of voices and experiences that will bring, and advocate the changes that is needed. And so staff most affected will be best positioned to wrestle with and enact these new processes and behaviors, also based on the extensive experience. So, we started off speaking about wisdom. We've got the wisdom. So what are we proposing that the implementation of this manual constitutes? What is the process that we are proposing? And we're saying that transformation is about learning. And so we also want to ask ourselves, what enables learning in institutions? What makes it possible? What are the conditions that make it possible for us to learn, to grow, to adapt and change, and ultimately transform? So we just wanted to remind you that, we've got some of these beautiful principles and statements in the manual, in the preface to the manual. So moving to the next slide, I'm going to ask Ilze to just share with us some of these concepts.
Thanks, Des. Yeah, so this is just to inspire you to go back to the manual and maybe read the section at the front of the manual where Des and I reflected on the change management principles. So when we talk about implementation of the manual, we talk about learning, and when we are talking about transformation. And so one of the things that's needed when we speak about enabling conditions for transformation, for change, we talk about this concept of psychological safety. And people have identified psychological safety as the most critical element in organizations today. What happens with psychological safety is that there are two forces at work. The one force is whether we're feeling psychologically safe in organizations, and the other force is the question around accountability. And when we have very high accountability, like maybe some people have said with some of the previous assessments, which took more of an audit approach, where there was very high accountability, but there was maybe not that much psychological safety, it can put us in what is referred to as the anxiety zone. And that is not a zone in which healthy transformation can happen. But if we're doing these assessments on our own, where there's no accountability and where there's no deadlines and where there's no community within which we're operating, we're just doing it completely on our own, in our own comfort zone, they're also not the necessary results for us, where we are psychologically safe, but where we also have high accountability. And for this, we need to get into a learning zone. On Thursday, we're going to revisit this concept of psychological safety, where we're going to reflect a little bit deeper about how we create more psychological safety in our institutions so that we can be in a learning zone, so that we can be in an implementation mode of our manual, and so that the assessments can serve the purpose to develop our capacity and to help us learn, rather than just to do the tick boxes. So psychological safety has been described as being able to give and receive feedback, to raise your issues and concerns, to be able to disagree with one another, ask for clarification, admit error, ask difficult questions. And without these kinds of behaviors, we are not able to learn, we're not able to do our assessments with a degree of rigor and integrity, and we're not able to grow and transform. We hope that many of you on the call today would have been part of either the original change webinar that Des, or maybe you have come across this graphic in some other forms. If you haven't, please go to the Ask Fulu webinar that Des and I did on the conditions that's required for complex change. And you will see how this little graphic, every element on this little graphic, we speak to and comes alive in that needs to be an agent of change in our institutions.
So we just wanted to remind you that, you know, we also bring in the whole idea of organizations as complex systems. So we've been using that approach, you know, that we don't want to see an organization as a machine, but that these are complex systems of personalities, relationships, power dynamics. And so the process also approaches the assessment with that perspective, that we are more than the structures and procedures, that organizations are living systems capable of change, and with, also have different levels of complexity that we'll share with you in a few minutes. And so that sort of takes us into the different levels of organizational life. Okay, I'll do the next slide as well. So we love this quote from Margaret Wheatley, where she says that what we know about individuals, no matter how rich the details, will never give us the ability to predict how they will behave as a system. And so once individuals link together, they become something different. Their relationships change us, reveal us, evoke more from us. It's only when we join with others do our gifts become visible, even to ourselves. So this idea that, coming together, bringing people together, reveals these multiple levels of complexity as well as the gifts. And of course, it is all about relationships.
So colleagues, what we're also hoping to do, as we look forward beyond the assessments, is to create communities of practice within and among the NSCF, where ongoing learning happens, and ongoing implementation, and ongoing sharing of expertise and skills, so that we create what we call in organizational language, we create a field, a real field of learning that's happening all the time, so that every single member of the NSCF at any moment can ask somebody a question, can offer somebody some or send an email, and so that this could be a vibrant network of learning. And the language that's used for this in organizational learning is this idea of rhizomatic learning, like the rhizomes, certain plant systems that have these rhizomic networks of roots, where new plants, new ideas can sprout at any point in this root system. And this is our dream and our hope for the NSCF, that we become a community of practice where learning is happening all the time from and among each other. Des and I also just wanted to remind this whole community that whilst many of the changes seem to be at the lower levels of organizational complexity, it's got to do with issues around the physical level and all these physical things, and it also has to do with structures and procedures and fire and risk and policies. So a lot of the issues that the manual asking of us are sitting at level 1 and level 2 of this diagram. But what we know as change management facilitators is that things can only change at levels 1 and 2. If things at level 1 and 2, we have to focus on levels 3, 4, 5, and 6. We have to focus on our relationships, building effective communities of learning, effective conflict resolution mechanisms, courageous conversations. We have to focus on our values and on our identity as these custodians of these collections. So whilst the changes might is at a slightly higher level, and so it's critically important in this process that we focus our attention also at the level of building the relationships and preparing the ground in which the changes can happen.
Thanks, Des and Ilze. So I'll be giving an overview of the engagements or touch points that we are proposing as the overall assessment process and what impact these engagements will have on your time. And so all of these engagements are all very much based on the U theory, which was developed by Otto Scharmer. And he believed that the quality of results achieved by any system is a function of the quality of awareness that people in these systems operate from. And so this is a call for a new consciousness and a new collective leadership capacity to meet our challenges in a more intentional and strategic way. And this calls for us to come to each engagement with an open mind, an open heart, and an open will to co-create solutions by convening in a collaborative way and going down the U on the left side by observing the issues at hand and taking into account multiple perspectives. And then at the bottom of the U by reflecting and reconnecting to our deepest values and motivations. And then coming up the U on the right-hand side, acting or prototyping means the co-creation of new models of the way forward. Finally, ending off with harvesting the new insights, clarifying next steps, and institutionalizing these into practice. And so there are 5 touch points for the entire assessment process. And the timing allocated to these are based on our theory of change and supporting action, learning, and development. And we already had our first engagement with the directors of the institutions. And we had the same presentation with them, and we collected feedback from them. And then our next touch point is obviously the forum this week. And then the next engagement we are proposing are orientation workshops for the assessments in January and February 2023. The actual assessments taking place in March, April, and May 2023. And then ending off with sense-making sessions regarding the outcomes of the assessments in July and August. And so I'll just give a little more detail on each engagement. So starting off with the forum where we find ourselves now. This forum is designed to bring all staff from the collections, data management, research together with an overall theme of the assessments. And it's an opportunity for us to get feedback from the community, firstly on manual implementation. So because the manual underpins the assessment, so what challenges are you experiencing? And what wins have you had? And then it's an opportunity to co-create and design the assessment process as a community. Very importantly, we also, as Des and Ilze alluded to, we need to consider the change and transformation required of us in this context. And then obviously as with all other forums, it's an opportunity for staff to showcase their work and talk about contemporary issues in the field. We're then proposing 2-day regional launch workshops or orientation workshops, and we could call these like mini forums for each region, where we require the attendance of all staff and the managers and the institution director and CEOs, very important. And this will be to plan the actual assessments, identifying institutional champions who will drive the process within each institution, time frames for each institution, and setting out responsibilities. And these workshops will be facilitated by Des and Ilze, and the hub team will be making all logistical and travel arrangements if it is done physically, which will be covered by the NSCF budget. And we'll also need a liaison person per institution with which the hub can coordinate for logistical arrangements. Then the actual facilitated assessments are proposed to take place in March, April, and May 2023. And we estimate that these will take 1 day per collection. So this will follow your actual self-assessments that Ian was explaining, that we are going to give you an opportunity between the orientation workshops and the facilitated assessments for you to do your own assessments. And so it will give you an opportunity to score your collection first beforehand, using the assessment tool and actually completing that assessment on your own. And then the facilitated assessments will then to go through those scores and gather any additional data or clarity needed. So it will be a facilitated assessment and an action learning process consisting of, we're proposing that it consists of a hub team member, collection staff member, and also an institutional staff member. And the institutional staff member is required to assist with metrics that might not be collection specific, such as institutional risk management policy. But we will be giving you an opportunity to give inputs on the composition of the moderation team and what you think would work best. And then finally, the data will be gathered from the assessments by the hub during June, and then the outcomes will be communicated and discussed at the proposed sense-making workshops in July and August, which will also be regional. And this is an opportunity to make sense of what the outcomes mean for each collection and what the way forward is. And this will again be facilitated by Des and Ilze, and travel and budget will be handled by the hub. Yeah, and I think just to end off by saying that these engagements that we're proposing here is just a proposal, and you will have an opportunity to give suggestions and comments on Friday. Yeah, I think that's it from me. Thank you.
So yeah, I don't think we have time for extensive sort of feedback or comments on what we just presented, but if you want to, you can write some comments in the chat for us to have a look at. But as Chanel said, you know, we've built in an entire process on Friday for us to look at this, and we'll remind you, we'll share some of the, you know, we'll share the slides again so that it will be fresh in your mind. But we bring it in here also by way of orientating the process. So I think at this point, I'm going to hand over to Fulua. They're just going to take us into the last part of today's session.
Thank you, Des. So I'm just going to introduce the competition to you. I'm sure you've seen some emails, as well as on the forum webpage. There is information about it. I'm not going to go into that, just so you understand that we have a competition running, and these are the prizes. You stand a chance to win an NSCF t-shirt and a branded mug. So the mug will be branded with the forum branding, and an NSCF notebook, a stationery. It's so nice, it's so cool. I hope everyone wants this prize. And then the categories that we have for the competition, we have 4, which means that 4 people stand a chance of winning. And for the first category, it's an exercising category. So what we are asking is that take your NSCF bottle that we have given you, take it when you go to exercise, whether you're walking or jogging or at the gym or doing yoga or meditating, whatever exercise you'll be doing. Take the water bottle with some water, because we want you to drink water, and take a picture while you are doing the exercise, and play around with it, be creative, do something that's interesting, and you can post that picture on whatever social media you feel comfortable with. You can post on all the social media or on one, it's up to you. So you'll be judged on the number of likes and shares on your post. So just make sure that you can let your friends, your followers, anyone or everyone to just like your post and share your post for you to have a chance to win. So these first 3 categories are based on social media likes and shares. So when you're working on your desk, in the collection, in the field, whatever, and then the third one, when you're socializing. So this is when you're with friends, with family, having a braai, whatever you do with your friends, that is socializing. If you can show that, and the bottle needs to be there in the picture. It's the star of the show. So make sure that you make it the star that it deserves to be. And then the fourth one is a creativity category. So we want you to be creative with this one. We need the water bottle to be the star of that photo. You can, I also shared a link just to get line, check what you can do. You can put some flowers around it. You can put whatever it is that makes that water bottle shine and is creative. Go for that. And for the fourth category, it's a voting category. So you have to send your photos to us. I shared the link that you need to use to submit. If you struggle with that, you can email your photo to me, and we will vote on it on day 4, which is on Friday. So I have just explained what you need to do for category 1, 2, and on the social media categories 1, 2, and 3. You need to make sure that you tag the NSCF page, and those are our handles, and then use the hashtags. This is so that we see your entry. So the first hashtag, NSCF Virtual Forum 2022. And then if you are entering for category 1, you will use hashtag water underscore exercise. Category 2, you will use hashtag water underscore work. And then for the third one, hashtag underscore social. And that will get you entered into the competition. The post with the highest likes and shares wins. And for the fourth category, the post or the entry with the Friday wins. So 4 people get to win those cool prizes. And now that's it. I hope everyone is excited and looking forward to entering. It's quite simple. So I hope everyone is excited and will enter. So I'm just gonna hand over to the quiz that we have for you today. So some people are going to win a prize today, right now. So Maxine.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I hope you all are well. So today I have been tasked with the fun part of the forum. So it's prize giving time. So I have 5 questions, and this is to see who has been listening throughout the forum. So those people who have been listening will be rewarded, and this is the prize that you will get: a bucket hat, a notebook, and a stationery set, all NSCF branded. So I'm going to ask 5 questions. I'm going to put it in the chat, and then I will say it out. And the first person on the chat to give me the right answer wins this prize. So there's 5 questions, 5 answers. I do have 2 moderators, so we're going to ensure that it is as fair as possible. 2 moderators that will be checking the chat and ensuring that everything is according to standard. So first question, does everybody understand the quiz? Yes.
Maxine, just to say, so the hub team is excluded. Yes. You're not allowed to.
Yes, sorry. I forgot.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, hub team. Yes, Mutlatse, it is unfair. I don't even have these things. Okay, do we all understand? Thumbs up? Yay. Cool. So first question, fastest fingers wins. First question. Do we have any? Okay, I'm going to stop. We have a winner. The first winner is, moderators can tell me if this is correct. Sanalisiwe Mia. Am I correct, moderators?
Yes.
Yes. Cool. Well done, Sanalisiwe. you win a prize. We will get in contact with you to deliver your prize. Next question. Isn't this fun? Next question. What is the tagline for the Eco Kwana initiative? I tried with the clicks. I don't see any answers. Tagline. Well done, Winston Woodenberg. Yes, saving our past, securing our future. That is correct. 2 people from KZN Herbarium. Well done, KZN Herbarium. You're doing it for the team. Right. Are we ready? 3rd question. 3 more questions, guys. Let's go. When was the NSCF formed? Now, all of these things have been discussed in today's part, in today's Nikisha Singh. Am I correct, moderators? Nikisha Singh. Yes. 3rd prize, Nikisha Singh. Well done, Nikisha.
Thank you.
4th question. It's a bit of a hard question, so brace yourselves. Name today's theme and principle. The theme and principle.
This one is funny.
Okay, I think we got him. I think we got Sorry, guys, I'm just seeing flop.
We have someone who copied and pasted. That's
fine. That's fine. At least you got it. Well done, Manoli Appelsami. Husband and wife taking the prize today. Well done, Manoli and Winston. So 4th winner is Manoli Appelsami from KZN Herbarium. And number 5, 5th question. Is everybody ready? Last question to win a prize. And this is the easiest question. Let's do it. 1, 2, 3, go. Name at least 2 social media platforms where you can get the latest news and happenings about the NSCF. 2. Okay, I see. Yes. My pronunciation of this name, you're going to kill me. Thank you, Fulu. Yes, it's Instagram and Twitter. We have other platforms as well. Well done to our 5 winners. We will contact you with your prize. Thank you for participating. And yeah, now I hand over to Des and Ilze. Thank you, Des and Ilze. And thank you, everybody.
Well, thank you very much. I think that's it for day 1. So maybe just as a checking out, maybe you can just put 1 word in the chat or 1 sentence. How was it the first day of the forum? How was it for you? Ilze?
Do you want a first sentence from me? Do you want a sentence from me?
No.
How
I just
was the first day?
I saw you unmuted, so I thought you wanted to say something.
It was a bit nerve-wracking on the bandwidth side, and I applaud everybody who had managed with load shedding, juggled devices, made other plans, shared together. Very informative, very refreshing, inclusivity. The word inclusivity comes through again. It felt like meeting with long distant cousins after a long break. I think if you didn't already have a prize, I think we would give you another prize for that beautiful checkout phrase, meeting with long distance cousins after a long break. It seems like many colleagues found it informative and interesting, reconnecting, reunioning. Those are beautiful words. Mkhatsi is still sore about being excluded from the competition. He wants to know if he's allowed to join in on the photo competition. You'll have to ask the bosses about that. insightful, foundational, lovely word, foundational, forming the flock. I think the flock is, we have formed the flock. And I think tomorrow we will realign to our purpose. We will realign to our purpose. And we have a very exciting day tomorrow that involves some breakaway spaces where we will be sharing some of our learnings around the manual implementation, sharing some of our science, looking at some young leaders. And tomorrow morning, what I'm particularly looking forward to, Des, is the video clips from the different institutions.
Yes.
So to hear again the perspective from the different institutions tomorrow morning. Nick has created, he's stitched together all the different videos from everybody, and that's going to be absolutely wonderful to actually hear in your own words and in your own voices, hear from all the partner institutions. Yeah,
Great.
so there's it is indeed a new action learning journey, says Jermaine, which is also such a lovely comment. Such a lovely comment. Heartwarming. Speed typing. Some are even learning some speed typing. Excellent. Thank you to everybody. Thank you to Chanel for holding the tech space. Thank you for everybody's contribution this morning. And over to you, Des.
Yes, so I think we can close day one, and I'm loving the group energy there in that one picture. They're giving us some group vibes. Okay, lovely, lovely. So have a wonderful evening.
East London,
Yes,
that's giving us some
group vibes. Beautiful, I'm loving it. So have a lovely evening, and we see you all at 9 tomorrow. We're looking forward to second day, and have fun this evening. Do something relaxing and bring your fresh energy. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye.